So we're going to do a interview style service this morning. So it's going to be pretty cool. We're going to have a panel of a few people. So like I told you earlier in the announcements, on Sunday mornings at 9, we've been having testimony time. And so we're going to use a few of those people that did the testimonies, and we're going to ask them some questions specifically about the testimonies. And just the heart of this is that you hear something today that drives you to realize that God's redemptive power is bigger than the circumstance you're walking through. And so no matter how far you ran away from God, he's always going to stand there knocking. And so it's just up to us to hear that knock. And so this is going to kind of pull out some of those stories and that, and hopefully it'll be a blessing to you. So with that, I'm going to bring up Kyle, Kevin, and Michelle. And so y'all come on up. So we're going to call this, I think we're going to call it Watershed Moments. I think that's pretty cool name for that. I don't know, maybe we'll turn this into a podcast or something with different testimonies and stuff that we have. That'd be kind of cool. I think that it's good to hear from the body that you're actively serving with and you're actively a part of, because you never know what they're going through. Sometimes people walk in the door, and I'm guilty of this myself. We walk in the door, and the first thing that someone says to you is, "Hey, how's it going?" And what's your reaction? "Oh, it's great." When deep down inside it might not be really great. So that's what we're going to try to uncover, because there's always always someone going through something. So it's up to us as a body of believers to rally around those folks and hold them up and pray for them and get them in the right spot. So I wanted to start with just a general question, and so this will be for each of you, a brief answer on this. But when you look back at your life and kind of your testimony and where you were, what was that turning point where things started shifting in your life? Yeah, the turning point when things started to shift in your life. Just a point in your story that things just started to shift, where you realize that, hey, someone's knocking at my heart. There's a calling on my heart.
Well, can you hear me? Is this fine? Can you hear me? There we go. Well, to jump to that part of my life, the turning point was I had come to a point, well, just a recap of my life. I grew up in the church and knew God. God was very familiar to me. Grew up with a family of ministers and people in my life. So, I mean, I was familiar with God, but I went through a season of just rebellion. And there was a point where I think I had to get to a low point in my life where God really had gotten a hold of me. Being raised in the church, I felt like I needed to find my own freedom. I don't know if that makes sense, but I need to find my own freedom. And so I didn't want what God wanted for me. And so I was like Jonah, and I just ran. I didn't drift slowly away. I purposely went in the opposite direction and told him no. And started living a double life where I had my people that I saw on the weekend at church, and then I had my people that was part of my secret life, that my people didn't know my new people, and my people didn't know my people. And so I felt like I was safe and that I could do whatever I wanted, that I had freedom, and nobody knew that part of my life. And it led me to people and places that never satisfied. It led me looking for love that wasn't love, acceptance that never lasted, validation from people that didn't even fit in my life, people I didn't even know. And it was at a point where, actually the turning point was when one night I was out, and lo and behold, some of my people showed up around my other people, and I felt very uncomfortable, and I felt very exposed. And so that happened, and I had a really hard night. That was a rough night for me, and I made some really bad decisions, and I lost control of everything. And I remember that person saying, "This isn't you. What are you doing? Don't you know that so many people look up to you and people think you are good and they want to be like you. They want to be good. And so in that moment, I felt like, man, I had just let so many people down. I was embarrassed. I had made a bad decision. I had no control. And that I really believe that God had that person there that night because I thought I was having fun, but I was so miserable while having fun, if that makes sense. And it was such a familiar voice that night, and it was the Lord. He was calling me, and I was just ignoring him. And the more fun I thought I was having, the more miserable I was. And it got to a point where I literally lost all control, and that person said, "I'm taking you home." And I literally don't even remember most of the night, but I got home, and I remember just praying. Like, I felt, I don't even know who I am. Like, I don't even know who I am. Like, I lost my identity. I was trying to be everything for everyone else. And so I just didn't even know who I was anymore. And I remember praying, God, I said, God, first, please don't let my mom and dad find me this way. That was my first prayer. But my second prayer was, God, if you can help me get through tonight, I'll never do it again. And I really meant it. And he told me, he said, you know, that scripture, you're either hot or you're cold, but if you're lukewarm, you are vomit in his mouth. And all night as I was vomiting, all I could think of was, I don't want to be vomit in his mouth. And that wasn't me, and that my identity was in Jesus. And I knew if I didn't run to him that night, that I would just lose the opportunity, and I would just keep going back to the next thing that could get me either high or accepted or anything else. And so that night was my turning point, like literally was my turning point. If God, you just let me get through tonight, not wake up in a hospital somewhere, that my mom and dad don't see me like this. And he really did get a hold of me. And it was gradual. I still made dumb decisions and mistakes, but I never went back. I never went back to doing those things. I never touched or played around with any drugs anymore after that night. It was a really rough night, but God got my attention that way.
Good. So that was almost your recap too, but that's good. Kyle, how about you?
Well, my story is similar, but maybe a little more drastic. I grew up in church, and but I never believed. I knew of Jesus. I knew of the Bible. I knew of a lot of things that I had grown up in Sunday school and heard all these stories and said I believed. But later on, I realized that I didn't. I didn't know who Christ was. I didn't really know him. I just knew of this story. And I went down a pretty bad path. I was subjected to a lot of things in my youth that affected me pretty drastically. And I ended up in addiction. I ended up with alcohol, drug, anything to sort of numb the circumstances and the pain, right? And it wasn't until I met my wife, and at the time, I viewed her as my savior. I was headed down this really bad path. The only thing I knew that was good was this girl. So she became my savior, if you will. I mean, when you're blind, you don't know what light looks like, right? And you just know that you're just sort of grasping for things to help you and to keep you from sinking even lower into that darkness. Mm-hmm. And she was that. And then after I conned her into marrying me and we had children, I was still lost. I was acting like I was saved. I was going to church. I was doing what everybody else was doing, but I didn't know Jesus. I really didn't know him. And, the scripture that comes to my mind when it talks about how Christ came into the world and he was light, but the darkness could not comprehend that. And, if you think about it, if you're blind your whole life, tell me what light's about. You can say it's bright. What is bright? If you've never seen it, bright makes no sense to you. It's shiny. It's this. It's that. And that's the way I'd lived my life and heard all about, well, Jesus is shiny and Jesus is bright. But, if you've never seen it, you don't know, right? So anyway, I ended up, trying to clean myself up and look presentable on the outside, and I ended up in a car accident and got addicted to opiates, painkillers, and my life just spiraled completely out of control. And I liked opiates. I liked opiates because it would mask the pain and the shame, and I didn't have to feel. I didn't have to fear. And but it ultimately almost destroyed me and destroyed us, destroyed my family. And after years of struggling with that, and after getting my, the accident, I ended up breaking my back in the process of that. Got healed from that, but I was still addicted. And anyway, I ended up in a drug rehab after my life had just completely sort of burnt down around me. And I was at a place to where I was desperate. And I remember waking up in a behavioral institution, basically where they send you when you try to commit suicide. And I woke up, and I remember after being asleep for about 3 days, I woke up and I was looking for my shoes, and I saw the end of them sitting underneath the bed, and I pulled them out, and there was no shoelaces in them. And I think that was probably the point to where I'd realized I was as low as I could get. Because I'd become a person that society couldn't trust with shoelaces. But anyway, I ended up in a Christian drug rehab. And after being there a while, I started listening, and I started hearing. And I just struggled so hard to try to hold on to what I thought was the real me, or the real, I don't know, my pride, I guess, is what I was holding on to. And I finally came to an end of it one day, and I remember the guy that was speaking said, what is it you're holding on to? He said, I'm going to be brutally honest with you guys in here. You're a drug addict sitting in a drug program, and if you lost most of you lost your families and your job and your life and your car and your house, and what are you holding on to exactly? And I broke. I surrendered at that point. God had knocked on my door for so long and tried to woo me and bring me. And at that moment, it just crushed me. And I crawled to that altar, a little piece of carpet, just right of the podium. And I told God, I said, God, I don't know why in the world you don't want anything to do with the likes of me. But if you'll just change me somehow, whatever it is that you're going to do, I'll serve you. I'll surrender. I'll do whatever I need to do. And that's when the lights got turned on. That's when I saw light for the first time. And it sounds radical and it sounds very drastic, but it was. You're talking about a very stubborn and prideful and arrogant person that held on people are around me telling me, all you got to do is surrender. I was afraid to surrender. Didn't know what I was surrendering to. But when I did, it was unbelievable. All of that burden, all of that pain, all of everything that I'd been carrying around for so long just sort of rolled off of me. And I felt like an old dog that had been chained up in the backyard for about 2 or 3 months. And you go out there and you take him off that chain, and he just runs and runs and runs and runs. And I knew I was free at that moment. I knew that my whole world had changed.
Amen. Amen. That's good. Kevin, you give us a brief recap of your story.
Brief recap. So grew up in church. However, similar in that I didn't have a close walk. Like I knew Jesus in the sense of I knew the name, but I didn't have a close walk. It was more memorization and understanding. So like I was on Bible Bowl, I remember. It was like the Jeopardy of Bible, so I could start knowing all of this stuff, but it became very fact-based. Part of it was because Jesus was introduced to me as this father figure, and I had a revolving door of father figures who individually were good people, but I was let down in a variety of different ways, kind of over and over. So when someone said, you need to really get to know this Jesus guy, he's a great father, I was kind of thinking, I've got those. Like, I'm good. I've been there, done that, and they say they love you and this, that, and the other. So I was very hesitant. And it actually, that kind of lasted for a very long time, where I believed in God, didn't have really a close personalized walk, and I'm very analytical, so I wanted to know more and like understand to believe more. And I felt like whenever I raised questions or tried chewing on something, at least the people that I was surrounded with at the particular time, I kept being told, just have faith, which for me felt like someone's drowning, you just tell them to just swim. Like, well, if I had faith, I wouldn't be in this spot. So the turning point, similar to you, I met a really great woman who was an amazing thread through all of that. But she started to grow in her faith and really started to plant seeds that we had some like, I don't know if they were they were difficult conversations because she was learning and growing in her faith, and I was a little, I'll say, kind of combative because I was kind of in that point where I was trying to believe and I was giving her a lot of questions that she couldn't answer yet because she was young in her faith. So it was a little unfair, but what it did do is it kept me engaged in this wanting to learn more. And we attended a church called Antioch in Indy, and that was actually the turning point because I got surrounded by a group of guys that for the first time looked at me and went, yeah, we chew on that too. And yeah, and here's what I've learned. And not all of them had answers, but all of them were fine with the fact that you had some sort of challenge.
Right.
Like, okay, great. So now I felt more welcomed. And then a very clear turning point was also at Antioch in a service. I don't know if anyone can resonate, where sometimes it's like the pastor's talking specifically to you. It's like a room full of people, and it's like, yeah, everybody else can go home, you stay. And it was one where he was talking about heart posture. And he was saying, if you aren't hearing from the Lord and you're not growing closer to the Lord, are you actually willing and open to being closer to the Lord? And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was the equivalent of being frustrated that someone was knocking on a door and not coming in, but I had all the locks on and wouldn't unlock the door. So here I was kind of in my own way because it was a place of kind of almost comfort, right? So that was a big turning point. So being surrounded by the right people, the Lord putting the right people in my life to really just meet me where I was. Like I feel like I'm a good example of how meeting people where they are to help introduce them to the Lord is really important. because, I would see people say, like, oh, you need to get to know the gospel. Like, well, I know the gospel. Oh, you need to get to know God. Like, I know God. My problem was I didn't want to identify with another father figure. I had to work through that. So meeting people where they are. And then lastly, just in part of the summary, about a year and some change ago, I went, and luckily I had a really strong foundation I was building with Antioch, really growing in my faith at a time where I got very, very sick. Still no idea what caused it, but put me in one of the kind of the levels of not ICU, but the one below it, on and off for about 30 days, and resulted in about 8 weeks of being on antibiotics and things. And it was a chest infection that impacted my heart, and one day I'm running on the beach healthy. The next, 5 days later, I'm so ill that I'm having, in order to go get different scans, people have to pick me up and put me in whatever they're rolling me to. I couldn't get up on my own. And I had already started hearing from the Lord at this time, but never before as clear as, I wasn't sleeping. I was having really high fevers. Weeks were going by. And one night my wife was praying over me, her hand on my chest, and I had finally was able to sleep. And I came out of a dead sleep, and I don't remember this, but I told my wife, "It is done," and went back to sleep. And that's our mantra now, where if I get little flickers or flashbacks or whatever, it is done. So it was one of those opportunities where not only was I walking closer to the Lord, but the Lord was very clear, I've got you in this, and I've got, it helped us walk through it.
That's good. So you mentioned you had kind of a revolving door of father figures in your life. So looking back on that, when do you think God started rewriting what a father looked like to you?
Good question. When I really felt called to lead my own family, because I think I had a lot of blame at first, a lot of, well, this dad did or didn't do this, or, and it really started dawning on me as I became a parent, where really, and I think I said this earlier and previously, but their only crime was being human. They were trying their best, right? And I was really holding a lot of grudges that I needed to let go of. And the Lord, I think, helped me because I wanted to start leading my family. And so therefore, he started really working in me on well, what does that mean? What does that mean to lead? How does that? And there were a lot of things that I learned from previous dads, or that I kept with me as kind of guards up that I needed to let go of. I mean, still a work in progress, but that's really where it kind of started to sink in more, as the father figures I had tried their best. I need to be looking to Christ as the father figure, not looking to the examples that were set before me, whether right or wrong. So that's where it really sunk in.
Gotcha. You mentioned when you were sick that you kind of woke up and said, "It's done." Mm-hmm. So you briefly touched on it, but how does that impact where your faith is right now?
Yeah, it was night and day, because I had heard from the Lord. I'm not one who hears from the Lord all the time. I've heard very clear instances, maybe 3 or 4 times. One in particular was more in the pruning process as I was growing closer to the Lord. There was a clear instance where I needed to change who was around me. And I mean, it felt like, without sounding dramatic, but like Lion King talking from the clouds, big voice, where I was like, oh, that's hard to ignore. Right. And started to really change my environment and how I was living my life. And then as I was sick, it was, really speaking through me to Laura so that Laura could tell me. But I guess, to be more succinct, it really was the turning point in feeling close to him and knowing and really feeling like this was a relationship. It wasn't transactional. I grew up almost thinking Jesus was more kind of like the president, in the sense that there was an authority figure. He was somewhere. He could impact how I lived, but I wouldn't necessarily meet him or have a conversation with him. But clearly I am, and he's there and wanting to, and he's pursuing me. And I think, a lot of what I didn't mention in between on the journey was learning how, and I think you mentioned it, how God always pursues us. There's this constant pursuing in different ways.
That's good. So, last little question for you. So, what would you say to someone who's in a season of doubt and fear right now? And this could be, maybe it's a doubt that God's hearing them for healing or for restoration in the family. But what would you say to that person?
It's a little bit of a multifaceted answer, but just kind of from my experience, I'm trying to reflect on what might be holding you back. What is it, where is the hesitancy? But also, how Kyle mentioned, coming into the light, meaning not being isolated when you do it.
Yeah, that's a big one.
I tried doing a lot on my own, and it only got me so far. I needed to be around other godly men and women. I needed to be in the Word. It was very action-oriented, and I wasn't doing really any of those things. I had this hope and this want, but I wasn't action-oriented about it.
Yeah.
So I would say, understand that God is with you, and know that just because you are chewing on something, you aren't feeling close, wherever you are in your season, that's okay. And he hasn't left you, and there are things, whether it's just kind of baby steps and surrounding yourself with, people who can help or willing to listen. I think there's just kind of a lot to that.
That's good. Michelle, so you mentioned that you grew up in church. So me also. So growing up in church, that God, just the idea of God can kind of just become familiar to you. It's just like, in church Sunday mornings, Sunday night, Wednesdays, youth group, cleaning, doing all the things that come along with being a PK, a pastor's kids. It can be really familiar. So what point did God become real to you?
Well, yeah, so growing up in the church and being surrounded by, everyone in our family was either a pastor, leader over some ministry, worship pastors, youth pastor. I could go on and on. Teen challenge directors. So every time the church doors were open, we were there. We were at the church. And if we weren't at the church prepping for a service, we were at the church at night cleaning the church. So as children, we grew up on the pews of the church, taking naps on the pews of the church. So God was very familiar in my life. So I would say that the turning point was I knew that the Lord was calling me, and being raised around it all the time, I didn't want the same thing for myself. Like, I saw my family and everything they did and everything they went through, and church isn't always clean and perfect. Church is messy, and people are messy, and I saw all kinds of things growing up in the church, a lot of hurt, and I didn't want that for myself. And I think that turning point was after I decided to go do everything on my own, and I ran the opposite way. I just ran away from God, and the whole time he was running after me, and he never gave up on me, and he kept chasing me, even though I just kept going the other way, and he never gave up on me. And so when I got to that point in my life, all of a sudden it went from I didn't want to just know about God. I really wanted to know him. And I had such a beautiful encounter with him through revival. And yeah, it was just a beautiful encounter that I had with the Lord, and he changed my life. And
That's good. What during that, you mentioned revival, so I know that has deeply marked you. What was ignited in you during that?
well, yeah, so during the revival, we went to revival that night, and it was, wow, it was amazing. The worship was amazing. It was like the minister was speaking right to me. And so he had spoke about mercy, and I grew up in the church. I knew all the phrases, so to speak. Like, I knew that God was faithful. I knew that God was love. I knew that God gave grace and mercy. But I didn't fully understand it because I had never experienced true grace and true mercy in my life. And you can read about it all day, but until you actually experience it and you actually walk through the love of God and his grace and his mercy that covers all your shame and all your guilt. So he was speaking about mercy, and man, God really got a hold of my heart, and I didn't just respond. I went running down that altar. I ran to the front. I ran to the mercy seat. And yeah, my life was changed. I experienced God. He just wrapped his loving arms around me. I mean, I probably sat there and laid there for hours, y'all, for hours, till 12 or 1 in the morning, just basking in God's presence. He was just, I was a wreck. He was just doing a work on me, and he was just ministering to my heart. And I just felt his presence like I had never felt his presence before. And I felt his glory, and it was just incredible. It was so incredible. I never wanted to leave. I didn't even want to leave that night. I just wanted to just more and more and more of him. And from that night on, I started chasing after his presence. That's
good. Yeah, it would be, 2:30 in the morning sometimes, and they would go around and start flipping the lights. Time to go home, people. Time to go home. That was a wild time. It was fun. So recently, fast forwarding to now, recently you've shared that you've been battling, some self-worth issues and just not feeling like you're good enough. So what's God been speaking to you now about who you are?
Yeah, so went through a season again of identity, just trying to find who I was. I went from, years of being a mom, raising kids, trying to be the perfect mom, trying to be the perfect wife, raised the kids, and then had more kids and started all over again. And while all that, working in ministry full time, which was really taking a lot out of me, between just being at home and raising children, but then also ministry and teaching and leading, giving my whole heart, giving everything that I had, to the point that it led us to burnout. And I experienced for the first time what burnout really meant. And so I had to take a break and a step back from ministry for a couple of years. And during those couple of years, I didn't know who I was. Like, ministry was my life. And so I went through just a dry season. And during that dry season, I remember just like, God, where are you? Like, why can I just enter into your presence like I used to? Like, well, what is going on? And he just really spoke to me, and told me that he was there, and that I have become just letting all the things of life and the busyness of life drown out his voice. And so, yeah, he, when I thought I was just a disappointment because I kept coming to him with all my problems, or coming to him with all my emotions, and coming to him with all my feelings, I just felt like I was just disappointing him over and over. And but then I learned that he was still there, just waiting on me to just speak to him. And that's what he's doing every day. He's ready. When we wake up in the morning, is he the first thought on your mind? He's just waiting on us. And I learned that going to him, he didn't shame me. he healed me. And he didn't shame me, he restored me. And he didn't shame me, he loved me. And so he's called me chosen and anointed. And I choose to walk in the path that he's leading.
That's good. So we're all called in some aspect or another. So some are called to work with the kids. Some are called to be the teacher, the preacher of the church. And some are called to clean the church, and that's okay, but we're all called. Some are called just to be a witness to someone. But we're all called. We're all part of the body. Everyone has a role in that body. What would you say to that person who feels called, but they don't feel qualified? Maybe it's self-worth. Maybe they don't feel like they're good enough. But what would you say to that person?
So if you feel called, you feel a calling on your life from the Lord, and you don't feel like you're dealing with self-worth or that you're just not good enough for that calling. First, I would say get into the Word and spend time with God. There's nothing better than just spending time with God and getting in His presence over and over and over, and let Him just reveal to you what it is. And I would say, sometimes we don't feel worthy for the call on our life, but God is not looking for perfection. He's looking for faithfulness. He's not looking for us to be perfect in everything we do and say. He's looking for a faithful heart. He's looking for a heart that's seeking Him. We see our flaws, but man, thank goodness that our calling and the giftings aren't based on us being flawless. They're rooted in His character and who He is and His love.
Yeah, and you looked up a verse earlier too. So no matter however bad that you feel like you've been, you looked up a verse in Romans earlier that you said spoke to you.
Oh yes. It was God's gifts and calls are irrevocable. So no matter, we may run from our gift and our calling, but that our gift and calling is still going to be there, even when we don't feel confident to fulfill it. The calling is still there, and we have to choose. Are we going to serve God? Are we going to follow God? Are we going to be faithful? Are we going to seek after Him? Or are we just going to be miserable, just wandering the what if in life? And so I would encourage you, if that's you this morning, find one of our people on our prayer team to just pray with you for understanding and wisdom. And
That's good. Kyle, so you mentioned earlier that you're at a point where addiction pretty much costs you everything, nearly everything at that point. So when you hit that breakthrough moment, what changed first for you? Was it your habits, your desires, or your identity?
I think it was desires, and I'd found the one that I'd been looking for all along, and my desire was to please Him, and I as a young Christian, I sought out to do that. But what I didn't realize was I tried to do it within my own strength and my own power, which caused me a lot of trouble later on. And because what He wants is for us to become dependent upon Him and to have the relationship with Him. And all goodness and all righteousness and all those things that we think we're supposed to possess doesn't come from how well we can perform. It becomes from Him. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that changed was my desire.
That's good. So we've all heard, and we've actually all said it a few times this morning, that God is always calling and He's always knocking at our door. It's different to hear that and then to personally feel it. So what was that moment like when you personally felt that, hey, God is running after Kyle, like He is knocking at my heart?
It felt like the earth was moving out from underneath me, and I was about to come crumbling down. No, literally, that's exactly what happened. There was certain circumstances that took place right there right there before I got saved. That was just, if it could have went wrong, it went wrong. From tires going flat to just anything you could possibly imagine. It was just one thing right after the other, where you had to say to yourself, man, what is happening here? Why is my world coming so unglued? But that's the thing that we fail to realize a lot of times, and I catch myself praying for temporal things that's going on in the world. But God is always looking at us from an eternal perspective. And all the things that we're trying to protect in our little temporal world, God, I don't say that he doesn't care about it, but what he cares for more are the eternal things. And he cared for my eternal soul to allow some of those temporal things to be removed from me so I could get to a place to where I could see.
It's a whole nother feeling when you realize that, like, the God of the universe is like staring right at you and chasing after you, personally.
Yeah, it was a little scary, to be honest. To know that. I had run for a long time, and I knew I was rebellious. There was no doubt in my mind, but whenever I finally came to a place and I surrendered, and the love that I felt was just overwhelming, that he would love me.
What, during that moment, what was the biggest lie that you were feeling about yourself?
Oh, that I wasn't worthy to be forgiven. That I'd done too much. I'd been too bad. I'd lied too many times. I'd just done all the bad stuff, and that there was no forgiveness for me.
Yet he still chased you.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no hole too deep that he cannot reach down and pull you out of.
So along those lines, what would you say to someone who is feeling in that exact same way, like they're just too far to be redeemed?
That is a lie straight from the depths of hell. The enemy is always looking to isolate us. And if he can isolate us, the only voice you will hear is the one that he's going to bring to you. And so that is why it is important not to forsake the gathering of your, to come to church, to go to a men's group, to seek counsel, and to talk to someone that's going to tell you what truth is. Because if he can isolate you, he will tell you over and over, you are this, you're not worthy, God don't love you, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this. My list was really long, by the way. But anyway, he will ring that in your ear over and over and over and over until you believe it. And when you believe it, that's when you start to lose hope. And that's the enemy's goal, is to have us lose hope, to believe that there's no way back to God. But that's not God's. That's not God.
Yeah, it's a lie. And you hit on something that he's going to say it to you over and over again until you believe it, but then you start speaking it.
Yeah, you'll speak it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember doing it. I can remember looking in the mirror, calling myself, some things I won't repeat. But but I believe that. What comes out of your mouth is blessings and curses. Mm-hmm. And you will believe what you keep telling yourself over and over and over. Mm-hmm. And we need to learn to be kinder to ourselves. Mm-hmm. We need to learn to speak blessings over ourselves instead of curses. That's what the enemy wants you to do.
Mm-hmm. Kevin?
And just to add to that, when you make changes, at least from my experience, I feel I've been told this and completely agree that once you start furthering your faith, you become a threat to the enemy, and therefore you become a bigger target. And so there are times where it feels like you are putting in a lot of effort to make the right changes, and you're being met with a lot of resistance. And I feel like that's a time where you, and Kyle's saying is seek counsel, be with other people, be in the Word, push through it, essentially, because I can remember, and I mean, still have moments, but I can remember where I feel like I'm doing the right things, but yet wherever you turn, you're met with resistance, and it can feel defeating if you let it, but it's the enemy's playbook. It's the enemy's telling you that it's not worth it, or you're not going to make it through, or whatever it is. So just to kind of add to that.
Yeah, that's good. I heard a saying a long time ago that's always stuck with me, that if you're not feeling a resistance on what you're doing, then you might be traveling in the same direction of the enemy. So reevaluate at that point. So
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that with all of us just talking about, it's kind of funny that we all have like some of the same things that we're saying about, feeling unworthy. But I just wanted to say that no matter what you've done, what you've said, how bad you've messed up, how deep it got, how ugly it got, there is nothing that you can say, there is nothing that you can do that you are not worthy, because you are worthy. You are worthy to worship no matter what you've done or what you've said. You are worthy to worship because he is worthy to worship. And I'm going to say it one more time. You are worthy to worship because he is worthy to worship.
amen. That's good. That's real good. So.
We're going to leave it right there. But to her point, so God, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. He is holy in every way. He cannot commit evil. It's impossible. He loves us so much. So when we're talking about worth and shame and all these things, the thing that I have to remind myself of is he thought that I was worthy enough that he would send his son to rescue me. To rescue me. And that's the thing that we always have to continue to remember, because the enemy will tell you otherwise. That, I mean, that's just huge, though, if you can really grasp that.
I mean, that's the biggest
That's
thing.
it doesn't get any bigger than that. Right. That is the standard of love. Love was founded, was birthed in a stable. Mm-hmm. That he sent Jesus. I was sitting at one of these events, Christmas events, and I was just thinking about how God had this plan together. And he saw us lost and undone. And of course, God's just. And sin has to be paid for. But yet, instead of us having to pay for it, mm-hmm. he found a way for it to be paid for. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no greater love. We can't even comprehend that. And we're never probably completely comprehend it until we get to heaven. Mm-hmm. But I'm just thankful that he did love me that much. And I'll say this right now. Whatever the enemy is telling you right now, I'm going to call him a liar, because Amen. God sees you. He knows your name. He knows exactly what is going on in your world. He knows every struggle. He knows every pain. He knows all the shame. He knows every bit of it. But yet, he wants more than anything to have a real relationship with you. Everything that's going on in your world right now is him trying to push you to himself, so he can have that. That's what he had in the garden, and that's what he is trying to restore right now, is a relationship. And when I say he's eternal, he is eternal. He is, because he wants to spend eternity in a relationship with you. So all the things in your little temporal world that you're praying for, that they don't come unglued, maybe they need to come unglued. Because God is thinking on an eternal basis. He wants to spend eternity with you in a relationship.
That's good. God is good, isn't he? Like, I could do this all day. Does anyone else want to do this all day? Do we got? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We're going to wrap up, but Shell's going to lead us in a song here at the end. But I do want to invite Kevin and Kyle and our prayer team to post up during this final song. But you know, we all deal with these things, and we have to lay them at Jesus' feet, and that's what church is for. Like we don't go to the doctor's office when we feel great, you know, and so we can be messed up. It's okay, but as long as we're turning our eyes to Him and we're laying it at His feet. So